with that energy, with the eyes closed, can you feel the mother close to you? And can you feel her surrounding you? Like the breeze surrounds you on a warm day, like the ocean surrounds you, like the arms of a loved one surround you. There's a passage in Leviticus, I believe it is, that says, to think of God brings great comfort to one's heart. Pretty obvious. But that's exactly what happens in the kirtan. Because your mind isn't thinking of anything except for the beautiful mantra that you're singing. And the more that you chant the mantra, the more you become surrounded by this beautiful energy, which is always only good in goodness, and always only compassionate, and always only wise. And knowing that that is the energy that surrounds us always, we can relax a little bit. You know, we can let the walls of our heart down, and we can practice giving and receiving love more often, more courageously, more fully, and more intentionally. So Durga, as she's lovingly called Ma, in many traditions she is considered to be the first incarnation of Shakti. Shakti is the formless power of the universe. So there's power, there's energy, there's the light of the sun, there's the luminosity of the moon, there's the currents of the rivers and the oceans, there's the energy that opens the bud into a flower. All that energy is Shakti. All of it is. And it doesn't have a form, but it does have a name, Shakti. And the name Shakti is oftentimes translated as power or energy. But at some point in time, as with all universal energy, Shakti incarnated into a physical form, and according to some traditions, the first physical form she incarnated into was the form of Ma, or Durga. And the reason why she incarnated was because the world was in a state of turmoil, and there were many energies and many energetic beings that were trying to wreak havoc, exploiting the humans and the non-humans, and causing a lot of grief on the planet. And there was this one individual in particular who had been praying to one of the three primary male forms of the divine. His name is Brahma. And so he spent 1,000 years praying to Brahma. And after about 1,000 years, he went to him and he said, Brahma, I think, I've been praying pretty consistently. I should get a boon, don't you think? And Brahma likes to give boons because he likes to be liked. So he said, sure, ask away. What would you like? And he said, well, I'd like to be immortal. And Brahma said, no can do. Even the gods aren't immortal. So once the divine essence takes on a physical form, it succumbs to the physicality of nature. So it too must die away, even though the soul never dies, the spirit never dies. But the physicality must, so I can't give you that, so ask for something else. And so he thinks about it and he says, well, okay, then I would like to be protected such that I cannot be killed by any warrior male that's a warrior, or any disease, or any poison. And he makes this whole list of things. And Brahma says, okay, that's reasonable. There's still one or two things out there that you could be killed from or die from. So, okay, fine. So he gives him this boon. And this person, very crooked in his nature, decides, wonderful. Now I really get to play up the exploitation. And he starts wreaking even more havoc on the earth. He starts killing people and ruining societies. There's all kinds of things that were happening. And so a lot of humans got together and they went to Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, the three primary male forms of the divine. And they said, look, Brahma did this, so he's got to fix this. He's the one who put this into play. We wouldn't have these problems. At least before we could fight him and we could do something, but now, like, it's useless. We can't hurt him at all. So do something. Brahma said, I can't do anything. I'm a male. I can't do anything. So they all talked, and Shiva came forward, just as everybody was getting irritated. And he said, I have a thought. Let's form a circle and build a great fire. And so they did. They built what's called a yagana, or a homa. And so it's a beautiful fire ceremony. And they all stood in a circle around the fire. And as they chanted, they began to take their weapons, which were representative of the inherent skill and mastery that they had, and they would put them into the fire. And as they put them into the fire, they would chant swaha, swaha, swaha. And as the fire grew brighter and brighter, they backed up a little more. Somebody else made an offering. The fire grew brighter and brighter. Once everybody made their offering, the fire was so great. It was such a great fire as no one had seen before. And all of a sudden, the flames parted, and out from the fire came Durga, sitting on top of her lion, in her deep red sari, riding English saddle, both legs over to one side, hands on the lap, sitting up very tall, 6 other arms hanging out with the weapons that were offered into the fire. Beautiful red sari, gold-laced tiara, large brown eyes, long brown hair. Beautiful, absolutely stunning. And as the lion that she was riding on stepped out of the fire, she said, why have you called me? And they explained to her what happened. And they said, can you take care of this mother? And she said, of course, no worries. So she dismounts the lion, but the lion never leaves her side. And she changes her garb a little bit, and she goes up to a nearby hilltop where she is the appearance of a cowherd girl. And she's up on the hillside and she's working as a cowherd girl. And the head demon, the one who received this boon, and in some stories his name is Nishumba, and in other stories his name is Mahish Asura. He had sent his watcher out to kind of take an overview of the landscape. And this person saw her and went back to him and said, oh, you have all the most beautiful wives except the most beautiful wife. If you do not have her as your wife, then you do not have everything that you should have as the ruler of the world. So Mahishasura says to him, then go get her. Go get her and tell her to come here to be married to me. And if she doesn't do it, then drag her by her hair. But tell her she will be my wife. So the servant goes off and tells Durga this message, and Durga very kindly just said to him, no, I'm sorry, that won't happen. And he said, no, it has to happen. You don't understand, my boss is not a patient guy. He told me to drag you back by your hair if you say no. And if I can't do that, then he's going to send his armies after you. And she said, listen, give him a message. Tell him that I mean him no disrespect. But as a child, I took a vow to never marry unless I met the man who could beat me in battle. So tell him he must come here. And if he beats me in battle, I will most certainly become his wife. No questions asked. So the servant goes back and gives him this message. And Mahishasura is a little irritated and sends a number of his demon guard out to retrieve her. He sends Madhu and Kaitab first Madhu and Kaitab are two demons that represent basically pleasure and pain. And he sends them out to her in order to try to confuse her, in order to cause her to feel pain or to feel pleasure about this idea of being his wife, and to infuse in her confusion so she loses her clarity. But of course it doesn't work, and she slays them immediately, and she sends the little assistant back and says, you've got to tell him he's got to be the one to show up. It can't be anybody but him. He sends 2 more, and 2 more, and 2 more. And what he's sending to her are all of the human emotions that we get caught up in. He sends envy and loathing. He sends greed and generosity. He sends confusion. He sends all these different demons whose essence are these emotions or experiences that we have on a day-to-day basis that cause our suffering. And one by one she defeats them. He sends somebody named Raktabija, who is a very large demon. He's huge. He's like Godzilla, that big. And he had a very interesting gift. He, for every drop of blood, so Rakta means blood and Bija means seed. So for every drop of blood that touched the ground, it was like a seed, and up from the ground grew 10,000 more of him. So Durga, recognizing that this could be a little bit of an issue, she calls forth from her third eye more of the essence of herself, which takes the form of 10 goddesses. The primary one there, or the first one, is Kali. And Kali comes from Durga's third eye, and she is sometimes called the terrifying one, but she's not terrifying. She's the mother, but she's the mother in a form that doesn't tolerate silliness. And to her, this Raktabija is a little silly. Why should he be able to duplicate himself 10,000 times and wreak such havoc on the earth when she's trying to protect her children? So Kali, who has a lolling tongue, and she's basically naked except for a garland of severed heads and a skirt of severed arms and legs. And she's very, very dark-skinned. She's very black like the night. And she's got white eyes that are bloodshot, and very white teeth that are typically dripping with blood. And this is her, the second one from the left. This is Kali in her 10-headed form. And she does look a bit terrifying, but she's really not. She's very clear, and that's why she carries a sword, because she cuts to the chase. So as Durga is cutting the head of Raktabija off, Kali opens her mouth and consumes him whole and puts an end to him. And we can ask ourselves, well, that's kind of a violent story for a yoga story. Wow. But here's the thing. Raktabija represents the 10,000 desires that we deal with every single day in our life. And I don't know if any of you have ever tried to quit smoking or quit drinking coffee or quit drinking. But for everything that you try to quit, 10 to 20 to 30 more desires crop up to take its place. And what Kali and Durga are illustrating there in that part of the battle with Raktabija is that you need to simply sever the desire from the root of it, and not leave any excess strands that can grow out into other desires. So if your tendency is to harm, and that is the desire that you have, then you need to stop harming. And that means all forms of harm. Just like there are different species of rose, there are different species of harm. And if you wish to stop harming, you must stop all species of harming, not just one. So to be true to your intention means you must be full of your intention. So the battle goes on for a while. And finally, Mahishasura realizes that he has to be the one to come. He's got to go and do this. And he's not doing it because he realizes that it's his responsibility to play out this karma, to meet her face to face. He's going because he's angry, because he's insulted, because she's a woman, and he's this great demon, and, she's caused enough trouble, so he's going to put an end to it. A lot of ego. So he goes there, and they engage in battle. And it's a battle that, according to some stories, lasts 1,000 years, if not more. And they dance in the battle, and they go back and forth. And then finally, in a moment, she ends it. She pulls her sword and severs his head, which is symbolic of detaching his ego. He falls to the ground, and the battle is over. She mounts the lion and goes back to where the fire was. She says, everything is back to normal now. So be well, do well, but if you need me again, call me. I will always be here to protect you. And she disappears into the ethers. Sometimes people ask, why did she battle him like that? Why didn't she just end him immediately? Why didn't she just, kill him right away instead of putting up with that dance back and forth for 1,000 years or 10,000 years or however long it was? And the answer to that is compassion. Because in yoga and in many Indian traditions, it is thought that to die a good death, a peaceful death, a death where the only thing on your mind is your love of the divine, realizes for you a good birth, where you will continue the good work of being united and being a positive force in the world. And her compassion was that she did this dance with him, waiting for him to come to the realization that he was being egotistical and to sever his own ego. But when she saw that it wasn't going to happen, she severed his ego for him and allowed him to come to humility. And his spirit went off into the netherlands, into the ethers, as it's called, to be born again, if you adhere to reincarnation, which is part of the tradition. So Durga Ma, the mother of the universe, a great warrior, and what she teaches us in her story is that as spiritualists, as religious individuals, if that's what we consider ourselves to be, part of our work as a spiritualist is to face these human emotions, is to face these human desires, and to call them what they are. To not tiptoe around the issue, but to call it out straightforward, and to make change courageously and bravely, to face the things that cause us the most suffering, rather than to hide under a rock or under our blanket or in our cigarettes or wherever it is that we happen to go to when we're looking to hide from something. She says, don't hide. Come forward. Be a warrior in your own life. You're not a warrior for violence. You're a warrior for contentment. You're a warrior for peace. You're a warrior for harmony. You're a warrior for goodness. You're a warrior who is embracing the quality of your highest self. And in a world like the world we live in right now, that highest self is very easily trampled on by all of the negativity that's out there. So courage is something that Durga bestows upon her devotees. To be courageous, to be authentic in your spiritual self, in your true self, in your natural self, so that we can face these obstacles to our own health, wellness, happiness, and oneness, and overcome them, but with compassion, not with anger. So the first 3 days of Navratri is dedicated to the mother, and And the second three are dedicated to Lakshmi as the goddess of abundance. And the third 3 days to Saraswati as the goddess of creativity. But each day of the 9 days, there is another goddess, which is a form of Durga, who is also honored. And you have handouts. Today's goddess is Shailaputri. Say Shaila? Putri. Shailaputri. She is the first manifestation of Durga. So, Shakti manifests as Durga, and then Durga manifests Shailaputri. And Kali is typically considered to be the first one that comes from Durga's third eye, but in some traditions it's Shaila. She holds a Trishula, which is, it kind of looks like a pitchfork, and a lotus in her hand, and she rides a bull named Nandi. She was born to Daksha, and she was called Sati when she was born to Daksha. And Sati is actually the wife of Shiva. Deeply devoted to Lord Shiva ever since her childhood, Sati committed great austerities to acquire Shiva as her consort. Shiva eventually agreed, being impressed with her dedication and devotion. But the union was not well received by Sati's father. He was actually very angry about it. He didn't like Shiva because he was a little different. He wasn't what we might call upscale. He was blue in color. He had dreadlocks. He walked around with a crescent moon in his hair and the Ganges River flowing through it. He wore no clothing except for a loincloth and a garland of mala beads for his meditation, because he was known as the great meditator. He's the Lord of Yoga. And so Daksha, who was a very proper individual and very much about acquiring power and prestige, he didn't like Shiva, and he didn't like the idea that his daughter was married to him. So he would always do little things to get under Shiva's skin, but it never worked. One day, Daksha was about to have a great ceremony that was going to institutionalize the practices of one of the wisdom schools in India. And this was to happen on a very important day that was a holiday of Shiva's. And so he decided he was going to throw this grand ball, this event, but not invite Shiva. She didn't care. He really didn't. He was like happier just going back and meditating. But Sati cared. Because Sati was only born to Daksha because he agreed to never forget who she really was. And she said, the moment that you forget my true nature, I will no longer stay here. I will leave, and you will no longer have a daughter. So Sati got very angry when she found out that Shiva was not invited, and she went to confront her father. And upon confronting him, she heard him as she was walking in the room talking down about her husband. And she got very angry, and she said to him, you have forgotten my true nature. This is the end. And she went up in flames, which she's Shakti, so flames are her energy. So she simply went back to herself in her formless state. Shiva felt her absence in the world as soon as it happened, and he went over to the place where this event was happening, and he destroyed it. He picked up her charred body because her spirit left, but the physicality remained. And he started running around the world. And every time that his foot hit the ground with grief, something disastrous happened. A flood, an earthquake, things along those lines. And eventually, all of the people went to Brahma and Vishnu and said, please do something about this. We know that Shiva's grieving, but he's going to destroy the world if he doesn't stop. Think about your own grief and the things that you have done in your own sense of grief. So Vishnu said, okay, this is what we'll do. I'll follow after Shiva. And every time his foot lands down onto the earth, I'll cut a piece of Sati's body off And once her body is completely gone and fallen to the earth, then Shiva will stop. And so he does this. He follows Shiva and he cuts Sati's body into 18 different pieces, and everywhere on earth that a piece of her body fell is called a Shakti Peeth. It is a holy place of pilgrimage where the Shakti exists in a form that is beyond obvious. So you go there and you feel the vortex, you feel the energy, you feel the Shakti. And it's considered that, when you go there, many people claim to have awakenings while they're there because she is so present there. So sure enough, as soon as Vishnu was done, Shiva stopped, but he was a little bit angry. He said, what are you doing? And then Vishnu explained to him that we're honoring Sati. We're honoring Sati and we're honoring the people of the world because what you're doing right now is harm. You are committing harm to people who you care about, so you need to stop now. And so he did. Because the first vow of a yogi is non-violence, non-harm. And as yogis, we call ourselves back to that. And with the mother, she calls us back to that. She says, no harm out of anger, no harm out of greed, no harm out of any of those emotions that are out of control. Compassion and love in a disciplined way. Compassionate discipline. So now we will come into the mantra Om Devi. Say after me, Om Devi.
Om Devi.
Shaila Putriye.
Shaila Putriye.
Namaha.
Namaha.
Shala
A student asked once of another teacher, why did Sati leave? She's the Shakti. She didn't have to get angry. She could have just, put Daksha down and told him what she thought of him. She could have ended him. She could have done whatever. So why did she choose to emulate and return to the ethers? And the reason that was given was because she recognized that the world wasn't ready yet. She recognized that the place where she was incarnated and the people that she was interacting with, that they weren't ready for the truth, and that they still had work to do, that they still needed to purify their hearts. And what was meant by purifying the hearts wasn't coming into some kind of conformity. It wasn't about following one leader. It wasn't about, adhering to something that you were afraid of. It was about self-introspection and recognizing honestly and openly the things about oneself that needs to change in order to manifest the world that we wish ourselves to live in, which recognizes the potential of spirit, the potential of love, and the potential of goodness. And so when she left, she did vow to come back. And she came back many times, in many different forms, and continues to today. So we have one more mantra, and we'll do this one a few times. Just trying to stay a little close to time. So let's just read through this first so you have an idea of what it sounds like. Ya Devi,
Ya Devi,
Sarva Bhuteshu,
Sarva Bhuteshu,
Ma, Shaila Putri,
Shailaputri,
Rupenya, Samstita,
Samstita,
Namastasaye,
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 Namo Namah.
Namo Namah.
I think I know where we're going with this.
What? It's the same. It works for all of the nights. Looking
It
ahead.
actually does work for all of them.
Yeah.
Is that where the fire ceremony comes from? Through that story where all the Venus or
In some part, but the fire ceremony is before that. The origin of it comes before that. Yeah. But as a gateway. Yeah.
Namaste.
Placing the right hand on the heart, the left hand over the right, closing the eyes if you are so called. And just noticing if you sense her presence, like a warm blanket wrapped around you, as if you were standing in the ocean surrounded by the ocean's water, or a breeze was wrapping itself around you on a warm day. How the breath wraps around each cell of your being, nourishing you, comforting you, and relaxing you. And revisiting the intention that you set at the beginning of class. And perhaps repeating that to yourself once or twice. And if you don't remember it, then simply make a new one. Or just enjoy the energy. And together we'll lift our voices in one Om. Take a nice breath in. Namaste. Thank you all so much for being here this evening. So good to see each and every one of you. Any questions or thoughts? Thank you, Dayananda and Daniel. Absolutely beautiful. So amazing. Any thoughts or questions? Or reflections? We do have this most amazing, beautiful prasad that was prepared by the lovely Brahman.
And Alejandro and Jackie.
Oh, and Alejandro and Jackie too. So a lot of love in there.
Yes, and I apologize, they are not spheres. These are very tricky, and so they're like little UFOs. They're sunflowers, so chickpea flour with some cardamom and coconut.
Oh, yeah. Johnny Prasad.